So in today's video, I'm sharing 5 keys to effective communication in relationships. But if you're new, my name's Michelle Ferris, and I'm a psychotherapist, and I love helping people create relationships that work. And in this video, I'm going to share how to improve your communication with very simple keys to get you started. So the first key in effective communication is timing. You have to know when to have certain conversations, and you have to get agreement up front. Because the worst thing that happens is when one person forces a conversation and the other person feels like they've been taken hostage. Like if you're in a car, if your partner just comes home from work and they start blasting you because they're super upset. Those conversations don't go very well. So what I want you to do is really think about when is the best time for you guys to talk. Is it when the kids are in bed, if you have kids? Is it on the weekends, or is it in the morning when you're fresh? Because timing is going to really impact how calm and ready you are to talk and listen. And that's going to give you a major head start in having a productive conversation. The next key to effective conversation is using I statements. So the best way to use an I statement is to convey how you feel. And there's 2 ways you can do this. You can simply say, I feel hurt when you embarrassed me last night at the party, or you can reverse it. You can say, when you did this behavior, I felt really embarrassed. Sometimes people don't like to start with I feel, and that's totally fine. The reason I statements work is because they do 2 things. They avoid blame. They help you convey how you feel about what somebody else has said or done. That's super key, because the worst thing you can do, which we've all done, including myself, is resort to you messages. And you messages are when we're really talking about what they're doing to us. And it's very blaming, and it causes a lot of defensiveness on the other person who's listening to us. So the more you can communicate from a place of I, the more likely your partner or the other person is going to be able to hear you and not get defensive. And that's what I want for you. If you've ever used iMessages with success, say yes in the comments, because they really work. Now, the next key in effective communication is active listening. Now, this is the one that takes a lot more patience. You have to be calm in order to listen, because most of us are really good at talking, but need work with listening, because it takes a lot more time and patience. You can't do this when you're stressed out or when you're rushed for time. But the way to listen effectively is to show interest. And the way you do that is called active listening, where you basically feed back to the other person what they've said. You can either feed back the content or you can feed back the emotion. So when you're feeding back the content, you might say something like, so it sounds like you had a really bad day with your boss and they really chewed you out. Is that right? And I always add, is that right? Because that shows you really care. And if you didn't get it right, that's totally okay. It actually helps the other person come back and say, no, this is actually what I meant. So it can clarify communication. Now, the second way to actively listen is to feed back their emotion. And this is an educated guess. You might say something like, wow, it sounds like you're really sad about what happened between you and your friend. Because the hardest part of listening is not talking and really focusing on that other person. So when you actively listen, you're showing that you're participating. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to parrot everything that's being said, but every so often, especially if it's an important point, just let your partner know, hey, I want to get this right. So what I'm hearing you saying is, and then just repeat it, because that's what effective communication is. Being able to understand each other, and active listening helps you do that. Now, another way you can show interest in listening is to ask questions. This shows that you're interested. You can ask clarifying questions, because a lot of times people get lost in what their partner's saying, especially if their partner tends to talk a lot. And it's totally okay to say, hold on a minute, I really want to make sure I understand what you're saying. Can you clarify this point for me, because I don't understand? And some people really love it when their partner asks questions, because it makes them feel cared about. So the next key to effective communication is recognizing when things aren't going well so that you can leave. Staying too long in a conversation that isn't going well leads to abuse, and I don't want that for you. And we all know when a conversation starts to turn. You're saying hurtful things, or your partner's saying hurtful things, and you're getting more and more upset. So the goal here is to take a time out, to recognize, hey, this conversation isn't going in the right direction. I need a break. The last thing you want to do is to tell your partner they need a break because they're too upset or they're treating you badly. Because even if it's true, it's more likely that they're going to react negatively to that. So saying something neutral like, you know what, I think we need a break, or I need a break, I'm going to go away for 20 minutes and come back later. Because really, if either one of you are really hot, it's going to take 20 minutes for that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response to reverse itself. You can't calm yourself in 5 minutes. So knowing when to walk away and to let your partner know, hey, this isn't going well, we need to take a break, is really key to effective communication and avoiding abuse. The next key in effective communication is knowing your own emotional triggers. And this is super important because we all have sensitivities from our childhood, and knowing what those are is going to really help you know when you need to leave. So for instance, a trigger is something where you're reacting more intensely to what the other person is saying or doing in the moment, but really it's because it reminds you of something painful from your past. It might remind you of something your parents did or something that was really a painful wound that never got healed. You know it's a trigger when the reaction is bigger than the situation warrants. So for instance, I used to date someone who was always late. I had a huge reaction. I felt so uncared for until one day I realized, wow, my reaction is huge. And one day I connected it to a part of my childhood, and that really helped me not react so much when people were late, because I realized I was taking it personally, but it wasn't something I needed to lose my cookies over. The other part is knowing your partner's triggers, because sometimes when we're in an argument, we can purposely go to those really hurtful places. That's going to escalate the communication. So you could even talk with your partner and say, you know, let's go over what our triggers are. What are those things that each other says and does that really provoke a big reaction? Because if you know those and can agree to avoid them in conversation, that's going to help your communication stay clean and respectful. So the next part of communicating well is being able to handle conflict. So go watch my video on the 7 steps for handling conflict. Thanks so much.